been a while since I've been here at the off-grid cabin. Things got a little crazy on July 28th, and after catching up with all that and going back to work and everything, it's just been a little hard to get out and do things that you like to do. But we're out here today enjoying this early fall like weather. I have a feeling we're in for a tougher than usual winter. If the early fall is any indication of that, it's definitely going to be that way. We're in September and the temperatures are actually pretty cool. I won't say chilly by no means, but I think it's in the mid 70s right now, and leaves are already starting to change, as you can see. I've got to get up here and mow the grass around the cabin one more time before winter gets here. But it's definitely a relaxing day. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the flood, some lessons learned. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story as to what happened in my world as far as the flood goes. I want to start off by saying that I consider myself very lucky. I had very minimal damage from the flood compared to so many. There's hundreds of people out there all around me and all over eastern Kentucky that lost their homes, and worse yet, lost family members in this terrible natural disaster. The story I'm going to tell you is about my daughter and son-in-law situation and what transpired that night that the flood hit. September 28th, 2022. I guess that's a date that if you lived in southeastern Kentucky, you'll remember the rest of your life. We went to bed that night, everything was fine, everything was right with the world for the most part, and we had no idea that within about 3 or 4 hours that most everybody's life in southeastern Kentucky would change. It was about 2:30 that morning. The notification went off on my cell phone, said that there was flooding in the area. Well, we get that pretty often, not a big deal. Read it, go back to sleep. Within about 25 minutes, the landline rings. I jump up, I answer it, and it's my daughter, crying her eyes out, scared to death. The water was coming into her house, and she wanted me to come there and try to get them out. So I jump up, throw on clothes, start out the door, and as soon as I open the door, all I see is a raging whitewater river running right down my driveway. It was a good foot deep, 1.5 feet, maybe even closer to 2 feet in places. Our cars were getting really close to going underwater, or getting water in them, I should say. And I figured out real quick, there was no getting out. Within about 10 minutes after that, the power went out, the water went out, internet went out, cell phones went down. All of a sudden, we were locked in. We were trapped and had no way of contacting anyone. Just prior to this, my daughter made one more phone call to the house, and it was at that point, and I actually got cut off mid-conversation, told us that there's just no way we can get out even up here. And keep in mind, I live on a hill, or somewhat of a hill. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 feet above the low-lying terrain around us there. But the water was coming in such force, and so much of it, there was nowhere to go. I mean, it was unbelievable. Well, that night, needless to say, the wife nor I, either one, slept. We couldn't get in touch with our daughter. We couldn't get to our daughter. We get up the next morning at the break of daylight, and there's still a river running down our driveway. It had receded a little bit, but not a lot. The damage, the rocks, the boulders, the creek that runs by our house was just unbelievable. There was gullies and everything washed out. I go to my garage. I had about a foot of water standing in my garage. I was going to get my son's side-by-side out. I'm going to go try to get to my daughter somehow if I could. Well, the first thing I figured out was I could not open the garage door. I had to dig the garage door out. Long story short, finally get the side-by-side out. The wife and I take off, and in every direction, we were running into nothing but lakes. The flood water was unbelievably high. We ended up having to backtrack and retrack numerous times just to get a mile or so down the road. Well, when we finally pull up to the area where my daughter's house is at, all we could see was her house and the neighbor's house were all underwater.
Oh dear God.
You have no idea. And so actually we saw my daughter's Jeep Cherokee in the ditch, turned on its side with the hatch open, doors open. We had no idea at this point what was going on or where they were at, or even if they had survived at this point. Finally, a few minutes pass. We're sitting here trying to figure out how on earth we can get to them. There's a cliff on one side, nothing but water on the other. You could see debris and cars and everything floating down in the flow of the water as it was moving on. And all of a sudden, about a quarter mile from where we're at, I see what appears to be my son-in-law. With everything, I holler to him with everything in me to try to get his attention. He sees us and he starts waving, and he hollers back, but we couldn't understand what he was saying. It was just too far. But I hollered one more time. I said, "Where's my daughter? Where's Corey?" He climbs up on a bank there and helps her off the bank, and they're both standing there. They're waving at us and everything, and it was everything we could do to not take the side-by-side through the water. But I was at least able to muster enough common sense to know that that would not work and we would end up dead ourselves if we tried. But they were safe. We knew they were safe. We knew their house was a total loss. So at this point, we're working on trying to get kayaks. We're trying to find just anything we could find to get to them. So we make the trek back to the house, and in the process of us getting back, it took a couple hours actually to get back. The water level went down enough that my son-in-law was able to drive his truck through the water and get to our place. Come to find out, that night, they had hung to a tree on a bank with water all around them for nearly 6 hours. Scared them to death. It was my daughter, my son-in-law, and their little dog. And I mean, I can't tell you the amount of guilt you have in a situation like that. And even though there was nothing that my wife and I could have done that night, we still, to this day, feel terrible that we left them in that situation. You've seen, if you watched my channel at all, you've seen the video of the destruction, the flooding and everything. A lot of that video was taken as we was trying to get to them and trying to get back. People were standing on their porches just in despair. There was people crying. The devastation was just unreal. And it just kept, the more we saw, the worse it got. But in all reality, my daughter and son-in-law and their little dog were very lucky. So many people out there weren't that lucky. So let's talk a little bit about some of the lessons that many of us have learned here in Eastern Kentucky after a natural disaster of this magnitude. First off, if you think you are prepared for a natural disaster of this magnitude, I can tell you right now you're not. No matter how prepared you are not prepared enough. I've had a generator for years. Used it for backup power during many snowstorms and all that. I lost it in my garage when it flooded. So we had no way of even getting temporary power until several days later, and we were able to get out and purchase another generator. You cannot have enough water. I don't care if you have cases of water, you cannot have enough water. There's been, in the previous video about the flood, there was a lot of people that was criticizing everyone in Eastern Kentucky for building their houses on a creek. Well, let me tell you, if you don't build your house on a creek in Eastern Kentucky, you don't build a house. It's as simple as that. Never before, and hopefully never again, have we seen flooding of this magnitude. When the initial reports came out, the Weather Bureau said that we had about 9 inches of rain in 4 hours. I just recently heard an update to that, and now they're saying it was more like 11 inches of rain in 4 hours. There is not a creek, there is not a river, there is not a lake out there that is able to contain that much water falling in that short amount of time. It's just not possible. We saw places flood here in southeastern Kentucky that had never flooded before. Keep in mind, like I said, I live 75 feet above the prevailing terrain, and I still had a raging river in my front yard and still had water get under my house. You cannot contain that much water, and you cannot prepare for that much rain. It's just impossible to do. Another thing I would like to say is don't expect there to be help immediately. It will eventually come, but for the first 48 hours, our entire county was cut off from the world. FEMA was trying to get into our area, and they couldn't even get their vehicles into the county due to the amount of debris and flooding that was present when they started coming in here. There's just no preparing for this kind of devastation. If you live in an area that is flood prone, and you know you live in an area that's flood prone, I would highly recommend keeping some type of PFDs nearby. In all honesty, that's what saved a lot of people in this county, was the fact that they had PFDs. Your personal boat, your fishing boats became emergency evacuation vehicles. Jet skis became life-saving devices. You need to remember this anytime you find yourself thinking about trying to be prepared for something like this. The things that you think are for fun all of a sudden become the most valuable vehicle you've ever owned for saving lives. This flood was no joke, folks. And you can say what you want. You can, say there's a bunch of dumb Kentucky hillbillies built on creeks and all that all you want. But that's not the case. There was 6 and 7 generations living in the home places that they had grown up in, their parents had grown up in, are gone now. Every day I travel with my job, and every day that I return from a week's worth of work, I'm amazed at all the houses that were torn down while I was gone. I mean, they're just, where there was houses is now piles of debris. The disaster cleanup crews are working 24/7 to try to keep these piles cleaned up. And it's more than they can handle. It's going to be a long time before a lot of people get back to a norm. I've got friends that lost houses. As I said, my daughter lost her house. We just got finished demolishing her place. Her house got washed off the foundation and it was just destroyed. We just recently got it demolished and cleaned up. And like I said, every day that I come back from trips, there's more houses that's been torn down. There's people in Eastern Kentucky right now that are living in tents, living in campers. Some are living on the porches of their flooded out house. As I said, there's no way you can prepare for something of this magnitude. As I make this video, there is many other places that is suffering from flooding, and my heart goes out to you. It's just an unbelievable event, and like I said, we didn't just have flooding. This was not your typical flood. This was like something out of a movie or something. It was just unbelievable how it happened and how fast it happened. Before I close this video, I want to say a big hearty thank you to some friends of mine from here on YouTube who jumped in and brought water and supplies within the first 4 days of the flood. West Virginia outdoorsman Lou, he rallied a bunch of his Jeep friends and church friends, and they brought in numerous truckloads of water and food and supplies and all that. Smelling Roses, many of you know Smelling Roses. He drove all the way from almost the east coast of Virginia and brought in a truckload of supplies. Coyote 238 and his family came in, brought supplies, and helped me and my wife pass out meals to the community, the Mercy Chef meals to the community. There's so many organizations out there that came in and provided assistance. I just mentioned Mercy Chefs. I'd never heard of Mercy Chefs until this flood. Folks, that is an A#1 operation. I cannot begin to tell you how many thousands of meals they provided. Hot meals. I'm not talking hot dogs and all that. I'm talking hot, healthy meals to the community. I was lucky enough to get to be able to help pass those out to several areas around me. Team Rubicon is on site in our county right now. If you don't know what Team Rubicon is, and you are a veteran, and you want to get out there and help people, you want to serve your communities or other communities, check into Team Rubicon. Because of the work that they have done here in this area, I've joined Team Rubicon myself. Not got to do anything yet, but hopefully that's coming. There's just so many. I mean, I can't even... Powell County Search and Rescue came in on the onset of the flood. Wolfe County Search and Rescue, both of them sent their swift water rescue teams in. Brought Zodiacs down, saved people's lives. I mean, took their own personal safety out of account and came in here and rescued people. There is just so many out there that have come in and helped and are still helping to this day. And I would like to thank each and every one of you. I've rambled on enough, folks. Enough's been said. But I just wanted to tell you a little bit of my personal version of the flood story, and wanted to talk about some preparedness. Folks, I'm telling you right now, you need to have personal preps on site. I'm not sitting here saying be a prepper. I'm not sitting here saying, look at every situation as the doom and gloom of the world. This flood affected about 4 counties in southeastern Kentucky. That's a very, very small area when you think about it compared to the size of the United States and the world, obviously. It was not a widespread natural disaster. It was a very compact natural disaster. But the damage and the cost involved has been unreal. So do yourself a favor. Put you some supplies back. You'd be amazed at how many people were living off of potted meat and canned sausages and just what they could muster up. It was unbelievable. With this, I want to say thanks to each and every one of you that's watched the videos. Thanks for all the well wishes and the prayers that's been sent out for Eastern Kentucky. It is appreciated more than you know. I would say I would end up leaving out so many names if I tried to name all the relief groups that's come in. But we do thank each and every one of you.